China's just so fascinating that I knew there was a story to tell. I didn't know what that story would be or how it would play out, but 2.5 years in, I had a pretty rough idea of what I wanted to say.
I think what sticks out for me is the importance of family.
There are people in this world that think and live differently, and that's okay. And I found that fascinating, and I just wanted to dig deeper and learn more.
I think we all like to think we've got a book in us at some point. I'd always known once we moved overseas to Hong Kong and then China that I would probably write a book. I just didn't know what it would be about. And as soon as we stepped foot on Chinese soil, I was like, right, this is the book. We don't really hear about the real China and the real people. And going to Xi'an, which was a second-tier city, it was just immediately so obvious that it was different, and I think people don't realize that there are 650 something cities in China, and so many of them have many more than 1 million people. So most of those cities go unheard of, and you only hear of those top, 4-tier ones like Guangzhou, Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. So it was really interesting going to live in a second-tier city which had this booming population, but was also still evolving so much.
Luckily, I was in the right place at the right time, and there was a job on offer in Guangzhou, and I took it, and it's been about 10 years now, so I guess it was just a case of being at the right in the right place at the right time, and a lot of luck, I guess, because since then I've had a great life here in Guangzhou, and I'm very grateful for all of the opportunities that I've been given. This year marks my 10th year in China, and also my 10th year at my current employer, which is Guangdong Radio and Television. So what was meant to be 1 year in the beginning, I thought I'd be here for a year and experience the culture and have a little bit of fun. Slowly, 1 year turned into 2, and then 3, and then 4, and now 10.
My China journey began, I suppose, actually even as far back as when I was in university, and I had a few Chinese classmates, and I was working in retail, in luxury retail actually, in Melbourne. And we had an increasing number of Chinese customers, and it was constantly the need to have some kind of Chinese language skill or understanding was really, really relevant. And then from there, it was actually through that workplace I met my wife, who was Chinese, and that's really the watershed that led to me finding my way to China, living in China, working in China, and beginning my education on that country and its culture and language. Everything was positive about opening up the opportunities about China. And I looked around the room and saw no one had been there, no one, as in beyond Shanghai, no one had lived there, and no one spoke the language. And the only people who could perceivably get that kind of interesting, which I saw as an adventure, work, were the Chinese who had moved to Australia, because there was no one else. So I thought, well, there's a huge need and potential opportunity and adventure that I can take advantage of by actually going to this country. And that's part of what took me there in 2014.
I think the main surprise was just the sheer size of the country and just how massive everything is, because I'm from west of Brisbane. Brisbane to me used to seem like a big city. you know, with a population of 2 million people. Whereas now, living in Guangzhou with more than 10 million people, it's just the sheer scale of everything in China.
China is such a contradicting place. You know, as you say, it is growing so rapidly that's unparalleled anywhere in the world. Things change overnight. You know, a restaurant can be pulled down and something else is put up in its place. Technology is evolving by the second, yet at the same time, there's those centuries-old traditions that are still held close to them. You know, in the parks, you know, of a morning, everybody's out, you know, singing at the top of their lungs, and they're playing mahjong, they're playing ping pong, they're stealthily, you know, wielding swords with the delicacy of a butterfly. You know, they're just doing all these incredible things that belong to China's history. And it's just so evident. And then you know, you've got that extreme gap between the rich and the poor, because a lot of China is still in poverty, even though they're bringing it out so quickly, bringing people out of poverty. You know, you've got the Ferrari on one hand, and then you've got the three-wheeler rickety old rusty bike, you know, with the man pedaling like crazy with, you know, things hanging off him left, right and centre, balancing as he rides along. And that's everywhere, you know, that extreme dichotomy. It's just incredible.
One of the things that surprised me the most was just how difficult it is to find information, even addresses. You know, you'd have an address on paper, you could look it up on Google Maps or Baidu Maps, still could struggle to find it. You'd ask a person who lives in that area, they may not even know where that building was, because the country's just moving and growing and expanding and developing so quickly.
I think a lot of Australians don't realise that until they go to somewhere like Xi'an in China and see it for themselves. They work so hard and they just want to provide a good life, you know, and of course culture dictates that they have to look after their parents. So most of them have got parents living with them, or, you know, they're living in their homes and taking care of them. And as soon as they get elderly and if they get sick, well, you know, it's that important that they'll quit their job and go out to the rural villages and take care of their parents, because that's what you do. So there's that whole humanity that we often don't see so much in Australia. It's neglect, you know, we often neglect our elderly people. But yeah, I think it's just not what it appears on the surface. Underneath, there is so much more going on in China.
The importance, like at a tiny micro level, of every member of the family from top to bottom, whether it's grandparents overly caring for grandchildren, or it's children caring for their own parents. You know, and you see like a grandmother who probably can walk without issue, but she has her sons or her grandsons holding her around as she walks, you know, holding this arm, holding that arm, and it almost looks like a show, but it's coming from a really good place. It's coming from a place that this is the most important person in our family because of their age and who they, you know, and the family that they have below them that they've helped create. And we're showing our respect for them when they're in a moment of weakness, or they're in a moment of where they need a bit of help from us. And they've done that to us, and we're paying them back for that help from when we were young. And there's just these values that are entwined in the family unit of China that I think are incredible.
In fact, whenever something political does happen, the first response from most of the people I know is, "Are you okay? Do you need to talk? Are you stressed?" You know, that's the response I get from people. And I think that's actually kind of nice, because I feel like they've put in some thought. They've thought about it. They know that I'm Australian, and when some sensitive political incidents happen, their first thought isn't to come to me and talk about politics. Their first reaction is to come to me and ask whether or not I'm okay, which is really, I mean, I guess that just shows how Chinese people really do. If you are genuine with them, they're also genuine with you as well, and they'll treat you as a friend. They won't treat you as an outsider, even though really you are an outsider, you're a foreigner. I
was different, but ultimately I guess they could see that we are all the same, as we mentioned earlier. You know, we've all got a sense of humour, and, you know, we all feel the same about certain things. So Yeah, definitely. I think that they are open to the Western world. It's just that for so long it has been closed to them. China is part of my history now. It's part of my family's, my daughter who was born in Hong Kong, but she remembers Xi'an, you know, really fondly. So it's part of us, and we won't ever forget that. You know, it shaped who we are forever.